Hello, hello, everybody. Happy Monday afternoon. It is lunchtime on Monday, and it seems to be a beautiful day outside, if not incredibly hot. Please remember to stay safe out there. We don't want anything happening to anybody that we can prevent. And what I'm really excited about this Monday is introducing a larger community to one of our favorites. So, Caleb is here with Lecturely. He is an up and coming rising star in the San Antonio startup ecosystem. He's actually pretty tenured at this point. He's got an amazing backstory. And I'd love to be able to have him explain a little bit more about who he is and what he has been up to in the past couple of years. Caleb, why don't you tell everybody what's going on with you?
Thank you, Joyce. The past few years, my freshman year, I got started in entrepreneurship when I helped co-found FloatMe, which was an easy way for employees to get early access to their pay, a way to save, and financial education. And I've been really involved in the community, primarily to get high school students involved in entrepreneurship. As a high school student myself, I can tell you that we have a unique perspective and the ability to create because YouTube and all those platforms exist today. We're able to do anything as long as you research it. So I ran the Learn Summer program back in my freshman year, and also we started a new one called Outlook Startup to help students engage in entrepreneurship, which is actually coming up soon in an online event. And recently, I co-founded Lecturely, which is a financial education platform. An education platform where students and teachers can go on to better manage their classroom and track students' interests through adaptive curriculum.
So I guess a very important question is to ask, like, when do you ever sleep? Because I'm not sure that you have much time these days.
Uh, I have a lot of coffee,
Oh, okay.
and I do try to get in some sleep, usually by 1. Um, but yes, I try to get some sleep in because the more sleep, the more functional I am generally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's incredibly important. Well, for those of you who are tuning in who maybe missed Caleb's introduction, what makes Caleb additionally special, on top of the fact that he's a phenomenally talented developer as well as an entrepreneur in our ecosystem, is that he is a high school student who is going through multiple iterations of ideas at this point. And we're very excited to have him on with us talking about his latest venture, Lecturely. So when you say that Lecturely is all about reinventing the classroom, why is it that you felt that it was important to get started doing something with
Yeah.
that?
So education has really been the same since the Industrial Revolution, where it's a cookie cutter style per student. And classrooms today have the technology to really personalize the education to the students' needs, but it's not happening because all current platforms, they're pretty much a fancy form of paper where you can turn in assignments, get assignments, and it's just digitizing paper. And while I was out during this past summer at Stanford, one thing that I really wanted to focus on was education. How can we bring it into the 21st century? And that's when we came up with Lecturely. And what we started out with was the adaptive curriculum, which is changing the Common Core curriculum to students' needs. So instead of like just math, it's now math with Minecraft or science with rockets. So it really engages the students to keep them more engaged in the content and therefore increasing test scores, increasing engagement, and also promoting creativity and individualism.
No, I think that that's a really beautiful concept, and it's so inspiring to see it coming from, the students that are experiencing these kinds of things today. I mean, it's very clear that technology in our social life in many aspects has kind of outstripped curriculum, and it's hard for teachers to pull it in sometimes, not because they're not amazing, but because the system itself is not really structured for them to be as creative or as adaptive as the tool that you guys are creating. So it's super exciting to have you guys doing that as well. So some of the people who are in the audience, are developers and engineers, and they have ideas on how to get started. And you've gone through a couple iterations of starting from the ground up with product development. So how is it that you guys have approached taking your don't give away your secret sauce. But if you want to give some tips or tricks for the people out there who have an idea and kind of want to build towards a concept, can you talk us through some of the things that you've done?
Yeah, so I guess one of the biggest things is like just get started. You can have an idea and just think about it for years upon years, but never turn it into reality. If you're a developer and you have an idea for an app, start building out that MVP, start talking to your potential customers, and really just push forward on it. Because if you create your idea to perfection, there's never going to be any failure or any time to learn if you think it's thinking that it's perfect. But when you put it in the hands of customers, you can find out that, oh, we need this core feature that we thought was core isn't actually. So we actually launched actually that well, not launch, but we started it this past summer, and we're about to launch our beta this next month. And our goal is, although it's not perfect, as we learned at Float Me, is we need to be 50% to launch our MVP and then figure out what the teachers want. So my advice would be like, if you don't know what you're doing, search it up on YouTube, talk to mentors, and they'll help you get going. But the key part is taking that first step because it leads to many more steps.
No, absolutely. I think that that's some really good, solid advice. I've had the fortunate pleasure of being, a mentor to your team a couple of times throughout these processes. And one of the things I really respect about the Lecturely team and what you guys have done is you really dug in to do your customer research. And so I would love it if you could kind of tell people a bit more about, you know, um, how you started going about talking to your first customers and developing this idea.
Yeah, so we're actually a team comprised of all high school and college students. So we reached out into our network of teachers, professors, and even teachers from my elementary school, middle school, and we just set up calls with them. Generally, it would be three of us on a call, and we would talk about what we were doing, what their thoughts were on it, and the current product that they're using and where it lacks. So through this process, we found what teachers want in their classroom, and we built the product around that. And just if you're looking to approach your first customer or to ask about what they'd like to see in a product, just reach out. You can do cold emails, anything, and you're guaranteed to get at least one if you try. As long as you just reach out and say, "Hey, I'm building this cool new product, but we really want to talk to you as the customer, to figure out what you want and to build a product that you want." So it's all about the customer and making sure that they know we're reaching out to you to build what you want, not what we want, but what you want.
No, that's again fantastic advice. And I know this is coming from a lot of lessons learned, and not only have you helped create the Float Me company in the past, and now you've got Lecturely and a couple of other ventures, but you also went to Stanford correctly for a really cool entrepreneur certification course last summer, too.
Yeah, so I was there during their summer classes, and I took multiple classes like public speaking, software development, and I was a part of the Silicon Valley Innovation Academy, which taught you how to bring 50 years like 50-year ideas and bring it down to executable steps. They formatted it in a different way where it was bring next step into 50-year ideas, but I kind of reverse engineered it into 50-year into executable steps. So that's when I primarily focused on education. And the 50-year idea we had was reimagining the classroom, not only the classroom, but education in general. So in the end, what our goal is with Lecturely, of course, this is, again, 50 years down the road. But what we want to do is we want to see school systems that include students' interest in the curriculum and are able to, let's just say, me personally, I'm interested in software development and entrepreneurship, teaching them in a hands-on method and also preparing it where as soon as they exit high school, they already know how to do software development and allowing colleges to just do the final touches on it instead of just a 4-year learning how to program. You already have a lot of that knowledge going into college or in some cases not even going to college at all because they have it in high school. So that's our end goal with Lecturely, but it's in executable steps, which starts with our adaptive curriculum.
Oh, that's awesome, Caleb. It sounds like, you and your friends and your co-founders like having experience being very bright individuals within a system that maybe doesn't always work for them. This is a very cool way for you to give back to your community. I know that there are lots of other students out there that don't feel like they fit the traditional mold and somehow feel like they're left behind. And I think that you guys are really nice shining examples of, you don't have to be left behind and that you can take a very active role in making the future. And I think that, it's very special that you're a part of our community and that you're doing this. So thank you. We do want to open it up for questions. So if there are people watching and you have questions for Caleb about Lecturely or about his history as a founder here in our community, we'd love to have them come in. And we'll take them as they come, but there's no pressure. I think because you've been around in our community for a while, Caleb, I mean, it would be really lovely to hear you tell everybody at home or at the office what the San Antonio ecosystem or community has done for you guys over the last few years and this new venture.
Yeah, so the Geekdom community is where I got my start. So I entered at a company called FlipMass way back when I was about to go into high school, and that's where I started to network and meet what became all of my mentors and people that I look up to and talk to on the decisions that I have to make. And Geekdom has always been in there, and even at Float Me when we moved out of Geekdom, when I get a chance, I'd still walk over to Geekdom and hang out there for a few hours because everyone there was so helpful. And if you needed something, you just have to walk across the room and talk to like a developer or something, and they'd always be willing to help. And that's one thing that I've always loved about Geekdom is the community and how much they are willing to help. And that's something I look forward to getting back when all of this is over.
Well, we'd be lucky to have you back. But I know that you guys have also through Float Me and through these other things, it's not just Geekdom, right? Like you had mentioned walking across the street, like you guys were officing at Active Capital for a while with Float Me. And, what is having access and those learning experiences with the investor community in San Antonio done for you?
Yeah, so having those contacts, it's actually not only what got me to get my start in entrepreneurship, but it's also every single contact that I've gotten through Geekdom has turned into more, and people that are willing to help me out as I go along. Honestly speaking, when I started Float Me, I didn't know that much more than development. But the Geekdom community has like led me to different resources that I can use to learn about how to, let's just say, throw up a financial model or customer analysis. Like during the startup weekend that Float Me participated in, this was when we first started off. I learned about customer analysis when we went down to the mall, and unknowingly, to my knowledge, they went and this kid is in high school doing a survey for all of this. They played it, that card, and that was funny to see, but they played it that card to get customer analysis, which was but yeah, the Geekdom community has been super helpful.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, that's funny, but I mean, it got you the customer analysis, right? Because sometimes it can
Yeah,
be difficult getting that in-person, confirmation or input. So
it
there's a way.
also helped with my speaking skills because I had to come up with answers on the spot because some person was from New Braunfels and was wondering what class it was for.
It's a small area, small town, San Antonio, New Braunfels. But for those of you who don't know, Caleb lives in New Braunfels. And fun story, I actually had gotten an Uber ride from someone who used to be a regular Uber driver for Caleb when he would drive him all the way into San Antonio and back from New Braunfels while he was working on these ideas. And if you think Caleb is nice and wonderful now, the Uber driver complimented him to me about, oh, I know this kid. He's in your community. He's such a nice guy. And I was like, oh, is that Caleb? And he goes, yes, it is. So anyways, Caleb, your reputation is well known between here and New Braunfels for sure. So as new founders, and I guess you're not such a new founder, but there are a lot of new founders out there. What's some additional advice that you can give new founders that want to take their ideas, from start to where you're at?
Yeah, so advice that I would have in addition to like just taking that first step is also just finding a good team. So I realize that I'm not perfect in everything. Like I'm terrible at marketing. That's something that I've come to accept, and I realize that I can learn it. But it's so much better to have someone that complements those strengths. And if you haven't found them yet, just keep looking because they're out there. You just have to find it. Like my co-founder for Lecturely, I've known him since freshman year, and we've just run into each other at various events at Geekdom and around the block of San Antonio. And I never really talked to him much outside of those events, but I knew his background. And I was just scrolling through my contacts looking for people to help me with Lecturely. And I was like, oh, wait, this person I've run into so many times, and I know he's engaged in the community for entrepreneurship and software development that I brought him on. So just like stay updated with community events and participate in those and just network. I know it's a little bit harder right now, but when everything's back up to normal and there's large events, you can just go to it, network, and eventually find that other co-founder. And also, if anybody is looking for like shares right off the bat, I wouldn't recommend looking into them because you want them really invested in the idea and not as much the outcome or how much they get right off the bat. It's more, what do you have to do to make this idea successful?
Yeah, no, you bring up some really amazingly awesome points, and thank you for that. I mean, networking is key. You never know about what people are working on, what they could bring to the table, unless you go talk to them. Being a connector of people is a great skill to have for yourself and your team, as well as for other people, because unlocking opportunity can really help set you up for success later on, even if it's for others. And then in terms of, you know, being mindful about who you pursue relationships with in terms of founders or co-founders or investors, like, yeah, you definitely want people to be in it for the right reasons because it requires so much from you, and because I think we all know, at least at this point, is that there's a series of milestones and successes that you have to hit before it really becomes the thing that it can be, right? And so you really need people who can ride through those milestones with you, knowing that it's going to take probably a little bit longer than you would like to see some of those results. Um, well, it's no secret, and I think you mentioned it just now when we get back to normal, is that we're currently in an unnormal sort of state of being. Can you maybe share a little bit about how COVID-19 or the pandemic has impacted some of the work that you've been doing with Lecturely?
Yeah, so the cool thing about all of that is we were really kind of set up for COVID in the first place because we were building a learning management software. And of course, at the beginning, we were planning for it just to be in class. But in reality, the program that we were building was also ready for remote learning. We just had to add in a few modifications to it, like video conferencing and various other features that would be needed for remote learning. And as soon as back in March, we were like, okay, came back to the table for our MVP features. And we're like, how do we support this for remote learning? And right then and there, we started development on that.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much. So we actually got a couple of questions and comments. The first one is from one of our awesome members, Jermaine Malcolm. What's up, bud? And he says, Caleb, you've been in the startup ecosystem from a young age. What was one of the best lessons you've learned through the experience that would be tough to get in the classroom?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, he said that, what is one of the best lessons that you've learned through your experiences in the startup ecosystem that would be tough to translate into the classroom?
Yeah, so I think one of the best experiences that I've had is even if you don't know the answer, just keep looking. That's something that I found out quickly in Geekdom was if you don't know the answer, either ask somebody or search it up on Google. Like Google is just a few clicks away, and you can find the answer to almost anything. And I figured that out with in classroom setting. I figured that out with Spanish, which I had a very difficult time of learning. Even my teacher told me, "Well, you're just not good at it." That's something my ninth grade English teacher told me. And one thing that I learned from Geekdom was, of course, if you don't know the answer, keep looking or keep trying. And I found a Quizlet was super helpful in learning how to do like various to me, it was more memorization so I could get a good grade, so that was good for that, and, um, Geekdom really taught me how to the Geekdom community taught me how to find those solutions and put it into action, so that's how it translated to the classroom.
I think that that's really helpful because it's not always easy for people to know where to go, and especially since how people have researched things has shifted over time, and we have instant gratification now. Figuring out how to go get those things for yourself is really incredibly important. Thank you. So Danny Puckett asked, if you were familiar with the CAST school system, and he suggested that it could be a really great place to share lecturely.
Yeah, so, I am familiar with the Castech system. Actually, my co-founder, Jason Salazar, is about to be a senior at Castech, and also one of our developers, Kevin, is also about to be a senior at Castech. So we're very involved with Castech, and also we've talked to Mr. Samandi a few times from Castech. So we're definitely interested in Castech.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, no, the CAST school system is really fantastic. Geekdom has collaborated a few times with the CAST schools in a couple of different capacities through the CivTech SA program and through a few other ways. And we've just been very impressed with the staff that's at CAST, as well as the students themselves. It's a very unique and exciting place to learn, I think. They're really doing some things right, I would imagine. So thank you, Danny and Jermaine. Anybody else, if you've got questions, we still have some time. We've got a half hour. And so we're going to keep going with questions. Caleb, I know you said that the customer discovery and research and getting that information was really important to how you wanted to build Lecturely, but I think you also maybe mentioned that you were starting to get the tool in the hands of the teachers and the students. Can you talk about some ways that customers have already been engaging with your platform?
Yeah, so mainly right now, it's just been talking to teachers and showing them demos and getting advice from them. But in the next few weeks, we actually plan on putting it into the hands of the teachers that are both on the wait list and also various school districts that we want to put in the hands of teachers to get feedback before schools actually go back into session to prioritize what they need for initial launch, and through that, we'll know what to do.
I love it. It's that iterative development. Um, so you had said that, the 50-year idea. If you could wave a magic wand or create a time machine, or if you could accelerate things very quickly, like what exactly is it that you think, or how exactly do you think Lecturely is going to transform things moving forward?
Yeah, so I'll lay out like my vision for schools, which is what we really want to do is change how education is done, which is mainly based on creativity and interest. So in the early stages, it's not as much like you have to do it this exact way, as in the cookie cutter style. It's encouraging different views and also different ways to get to the the end goal. So it's more like open-ended questions that a student has to research to solve and come up with different ways to solve it. And through that, they find their interests and also potential careers, which in high school will turn into specific classes that will that the student will be able to learn from and gather as they move towards a career. So, like, if a student wanted to become a doctor, it's primarily focused in biology and everything that relates to being a doctor. So when they get out of high school, they're already on the path to becoming a doctor. And for a computer science person, it's like all both based on math and um, creativity, finding ways to solve different problems. And once you get to high school, they or even earlier, definitely a lot earlier, is starting to learn development. Because what I see now is current schools, they're not really going too much into detail. They're touching the surface, but they're not going too much into detail. Like at my high school level class, it's more block coding instead of actual programming. And I mean, it's a good way to get started, but schools need to start at an earlier age to really teach how to do those tasks. So when they get out of high school, it's a lot easier for them to go into college or get a job.
Thank you. Very insightful. It's been a while since I've been in school, high school. So it's changed quite a bit since I was there. You know, it sounds like you're creating a system in which like students can continuously engage in things that interest them and reinforce sort of maybe what they would like to do in the long run, but not every student kind of knows what it is that they'd like to be doing. So is there opportunities for some creative learning or new, interests to potentially form while utilizing the Lecturely platform?
Yeah, so one thing that we think will solve that is by including interests at an early age and creativity. And even if a student doesn't know exactly what they want, that's when they kind of get a little bit of everything. So they can more figure out what they want to do. And like there's going to be those students and that don't really know what they want to do when they get into high school, but that's not bad. That means they can sample everything and find exactly what they want to do. It's more of a jack of all trades as they try and figure out what they want to do. And as they go along, they'll figure that out more.
That's awesome. Thank you. Um, so, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, and it's good to see that some of your founders are, people who are already established in the ecosystem. And I know you've got a couple of founders that are also in high school with you. It seems like a pretty nice dynamic team. But it's still very taxing to do all the things that you do. And I know you mentioned caffeine use, but I think it would be really helpful for people to understand, how you set up yourself for success by what do you do for self-care or how do you unplug in order to keep your mind fresh and your body rested.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things to do is golf. So I tried to get out to the golf course once a week, and it kind of replaces one stress with another, which I found is the only way to like get my mind off of what's going on at Lecturely and various other things. Is go golf and replace that stress with the stress of getting the golf ball from the tee to the hole, which can sometimes get annoying. But it's a way for me to unwind.
Yeah, no, that sounds definitely like a good plan in my book. There is something nice about kind of completely shutting off that side of your brain and going and doing something else that's still very precise, but it's not utilizing, you're not flexing the same muscles in that capacity. So let's dig in a little bit further too to your team dynamics, because again, like you have a really varied team, which is really great because I think it provides a lot of creativity, some really great perspectives, some good guidelines as well, some parameters that people can be successful. But for you, like how is it that you guys are approaching building the culture of Lecturely? Because that will help carry a team through a lot of highs and lows in the startup journey.
Yeah, so we my team has actually been remote since the beginning, because we're spread apart across various states and actually countries. So my team is from California, Texas, Virginia, and Switzerland. So we've had to deal with the remote work for a while now. And one thing that we've started is we're trying to do a team building Friday. So before our like team stand-ups call that we do every Friday, we're doing various team activities like puzzles. Like there's this puzzle called the zebra puzzle, which is super hard and it challenges the mind, but also inspires teamwork, which is something that we want to do to encourage And instead of like keeping the developers just with the developers on it, we're going to mix like where marketing is with a developer and stuff like that, just to keep everybody on the same page and also promote like team building.
That's awesome. That's really exciting. And yeah, I mean, for all of the stuff that is happening, it seems like Lecturely was really created at a great moment in time and in a fashion that allowed for you guys to be efficient and lean, and still build in those really good foundational principles of work, because the transition from office, in-person work to remote work can be a massive shift for people and companies, and not everyone makes the transition well. And so if you're already primed for that in a time like this, then you're doing pretty great, I would say. So we've got a couple more questions. Are there any tools or services that you would recommend to startups? Whether that's like remote learning or remote work, or is that just sort of like what kinds of tools you use to help set up the platform? What in your experience has been really great that you've liked across all of the ventures you've been involved in?
Yeah, so mainly we use Zoom and Slack on the Minutely, but also another tool that I like using is, of course, Drive, and we honestly don't really use that much that's out of the ordinary of everything. But also one tool that I really like is called Rocket Reach.
Okay.
So on that one, you can search up a name and get their email to do cold emails. So that one's a really interesting one if you really need to get an introduction or you need to meet somebody from this space or a specific person. You can go on there, get their email, and do a cold email to them. Although it's not as good as a warm introduction, it's still better than nothing. So that's something that's helped me along the way. And also, I found that if you're a developer, another good way is just searching on, if you're an iOS developer, like searching on Worldwide Developers Conference. Stack Overflow has been a big help for me. And also just like message boards on like Y Combinator and asking around. That honestly, that we don't use too much that's out of the ordinary for tools.
No, but thank you. I mean, you mentioned a couple. Like, I mean, the Rocket Reach one is one that I have not heard. But I know, having done market research, in the past, if you don't have a contact email, it can be very difficult to generate them or to figure out how you would go about it. Like, you can go comb a website and you can try to find like the analyst relations, or you could go find the contact info email, but it takes quite a while to get where you need to go. So that sounds like a really great tool that other people who are looking to grow their customer base or discovery, or investor, connections or what have you, that would be a really great tool to utilize. So thank you for that. Um, if we have any questions, we're coming up to the last couple. And so we want to be respectful of everybody's time, but please drop them in because we'd love to hear from you before Caleb has to get back to all of the busy things that he's got on his plate for Monday. Caleb, what are some of the exciting things that Lecturely is focused on or that you have coming up that you feel comfortable sharing with us?
Yeah, so recently we actually just launched an IndieGoGo campaign to get us through the next few months as we prepare to go and raise a funding round. So that one's super exciting, and also the final steps before we launch Lecturely has been stressful but exciting because this is the last month of development before we put our product in the hands of users. And we recently are participating with a UTSA program where we brought on 7 students to help out with the development and also teach them about companies, how they work, especially startup companies, and how much we have to communicate, and also just the various tools we use like Jira, Slack, and Zoom.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that sounds like a really great opportunity to leverage some existing programs that are in the ecosystem to help you get through those pretty big development humps that, you know, a lot of startup companies have to. For those of you out there that don't know, you can definitely contact like local university and colleges. They're always looking for real world projects for their students to touch and to get a hold of. And they usually do a phenomenal job. UTSA, UIW, and Trinity are some very clear winners on who we've seen do some great stuff. But Texas A&M through CivTech SA and Our Lady of the Lake have also pulled through. St. Philip's has also put together some amazing things. So if you're curious about how to get that going, I would just reach out to their business departments or their technology departments and see what you could potentially put in the hands of the students to help you along. So is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think we should cover before we close it?
I think you got everything.
Okay, excellent. So I guess before we really like wrap this up, if you would just give us, you know, some of like the top 3 things that, you know, you take with you when you approach your projects or your work week. Like, what are the things that are constantly in your mind that keep you motivated, that moves you forward?
So the top 3 things that I consider when taking on a project are like the impact it can make. So with Lectually, it was like reinventing the classroom. With FloatMe, it was helping employees get from paycheck to paycheck without being too much, without causing too much trouble, like payday loans and other platforms do. And so that's probably the biggest one, is the impact it could make. The second one is what needs to be done to get there. And then the third one is I just follow what I think would be turn out to be an amazing project. And it's kind of based on the first two, like what needs to be done to get there, and also how much of an impact it could make.
I love that. Thank you. Caleb, it's such a treat to have you on here and to get to kind of showcase you to a little bit wider of an audience. We love having you and your founders participate at Geekdom. I know the San Antonio ecosystem is very happy and grateful that you guys are involved and you are so passionate about what you do and you're committed to making our city so much better. Thank you. Best of luck on your development projects. Please keep us in the loop. We'd love to have you back to do a demo maybe of Lecturely once we get to that point. That would be really exciting to see the progress. And with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close this out for the day. We do have another workshop that's coming up on Thursday. We have Natalie Carney joining us and Drew Hicks with R2D6, and they're going to be covering event storming and thin vertical slice prototyping. So please don't miss out. That's Thursday at 12:30 on the Geekdom channels. We'll see you then. Caleb, thank you so much and have a really good day.
Thank you.